Hello, welcome back. I'm Robert, and this is our painting that we're going to do, a Bob Ross watercolor. I'm a Bob Ross oil painting, and it's entitled Bright Autumn Trees. I think you're going to enjoy this. Um, we've got a lot of nice colors. It's autumn in Missouri. It's a wonderful time to be out and about. We've actually had our first little hint of snow today. So we got a touch of snow, but it's a wonderful autumn day, and it's a wonderful time to do this painting, Bright Autumn Trees with Bob Ross. So I'm going to take my little curtain, we'll put him behind the curtain for now, so we don't get him dirty. Take my little guy down here, put him away, and let me show you what I have done up here on the canvas already. I put a tiny thin coat in the center of liquid white. Then I made a mix of a little bit of liquid white, and I added some liquid black on that. If you don't have liquid black, you might try just adding a little bit of black paint to it. So your midnight black, just add a tiny touch of that to get the gray. This just gives us a little bit of background, and it makes it easier for us to put the darks down. We've already got a little bit of dark down there. Now, caution, this has to be super, super thin. You don't want to have it thick on here. If I touch this, it should still show my fingerprint in here. So that's the way to tell if you've got too much paint on there. If you would have too much paint on there, you could always dab off a little bit of that liquid white, or liquid, in this case, liquid gray, the mixture of black and liquid white. So that's just our base that we have here. Here's the colors that we're going to be using today for this painting. We've got, of course, I put on here liquid white, liquid black. You have the titanium white, phthalo blue, Prussian blue, we may have a touch of that, midnight black, the dark sienna, Van Dyke brown, alizarin crimson, sap green, cad yellow, yellow ochre, Indian yellow. We'll sign our name with bright red. So those are the colors that we have. You might have a more limited palette. If you have a little more limited palette, you can still create this painting. You know, as you know, you can mix red with blue to get a violet or a mauve, you know, so you've got lots of different choices. So if you're on a limited budget, you know, and restricted, you can still make this painting. So I've got all those colors on this palette here. I've taken the palette knife and I've spread it out so I could tap into it. So all those colors are on here. You can see these are very thick paints, and that's one of the secrets of this style painting. You need a very, very thick paint, so you don't want things dripping down and getting into your painting, or trying to mix with more liquidy paints. So remember, you need thick paints. That's why the Bob Ross ones are great. You can always go to bobross.com. They have a beginner's kit on there that has the palette knife, the brushes, some cleaners. So it's a wonderful way for you to get started with the paints that you need for this one. Then you'd only need to have a canvas. You could order it from Bob Ross or go to Hobby Lobby, and you can go from there. You can build up slowly if you wish. In my case with this canvas, I've also put some masking tape around the edges. I like to see when it's done, I like to take the tape off and have it kind of framed. Sometimes people will put this on their wall and they won't put a frame around it, but because there's a white frame indication around the canvas, it looks great on their walls. So keep that in mind. If you don't want the tape on there, that's up to you. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to take this is our yellow ochre, and I'm just going to take my 1-inch brush. You could use, I'm sorry, this is a 1-inch brush. You could use a 2-inch brush. And I'm going to tap into the edge. I don't want to have tons and tons of paint on here. I just want nice paint tapped into the edge, just a little bit. I tap it in, pull it out, tap it in, just so I have a little bit of paint at the very edge. And then I'm going to come up here and just suggest a little bit of color in the sky. We're going to blend this out, but we start. Just tap a little bit of that nice yellow, just so I have a little bit of that in the background. So that just gives me a little bit of value in there. Then I'm going to come in here with, I'm going to take just a little bit of blue. I'm going to take a little bit of phthalo blue and crimson. More crimson than blue. A little black. I just want to get a little bit of a lavender color in here. So I'm just going to tap in a little bit of this lavender color on here, maybe a touch of white. I want to add a little bit of lavender to it. Okay. Remember, I'm just building a base now, so it's very rough. Now, I'm going to take my phthalo blue with a touch of, this is ivory black or midnight black. Phthalo blue. Midnight black. And I'm just going to X. Just going to make little X strokes. And we make X strokes because it's then easier to blend out. Okay, it's mixing with my values that I have down there now. And it's getting lighter as I come further down. Again, these are underlying coats of value. going to take my brush. I'm going to clean this little end. Now we clean our brush with odorless paint thinner. So I dip it in the odorless paint thinner, and then I have a brush beater rack down here that I use. Sometimes I take a trash can down here. I have a rack down there. But I also made very easy. I made this very simple brush beater rack here. It's just some wood nailed together, and then I have a dowel in there, and that allows me to beat the color and clean the brush. So I dip it into my can of odorless paint thinner, shake it out in the trash can, and then I have the beater rack that I beat it across, and that cleans my brush up. And you want it nice and clean when I go back into here to just blend it. So I'm just going to come across here and blend, lightly blend. I'm going to take my paper towel, and as I collect up a little bit of paint in here, I'm going to clean it just on the towel. And make a nice soft cloud sky pattern in here. Come across. Okay, so I'm just getting this little bright spot in the sky. Just softly blended. Okay, that's just going to be a bright spot in the sky. So now that I have that in there, I'm going to come back in here with some, I'm going to use a little bit of my dark sienna, a little midnight black, maybe a touch of alizarin crimson. I'm tapping it in here. Just tap the end of that in there. And then I'm going to come across with the corner of the brush. I'm going to just start tapping in a little bit of a tree line here. Little bushes in the distance. Using mostly the corner of the brush. These are my nice distant trees. So just a nice distant tree line. Okay. And that gets a dark value in there. Now I'm going to give this a nice highlight. So I'm going to clean my brush again. And I'm going to dip it in a little bit of, touch it into a little white. Got some nice, this is actually mauve down here. You can make that with blue and red. So I just want to highlight the top of those distant trees and bushes. I don't want to overdo it, but I just want a little hint of color there. I've touched a little bit of the Indian yellow in here too, just to give it another hint of autumn colors. Okay. So I've got that little section in there. And that now tells me that I can come down in this section over here. This is going to be water down here. So I'm going to come in here with my blues again. Tap into the blues. This is phthalo blue. I'm just tapping so I get a little bit of color on the edge. And then this is going to probably be water down here. So I'm just going to pull some water across here. When you do the water, you don't want to go originally back and forth. You want to go from one side, then the other side, pull. Pull here and pull here. And that just makes it a little bit easier to blend. You'll want it a little bit darker as we come down. It can go either way to look right, to make the water flat. You could have this dark and this become light, or this darker at the bottom, and then fade into a light. So it's your choice. Either you do it either way, and the water is going to lay down for you. Okay, now we're going to this other side. I'm just pulling across. I'm going to leave some of this middle sheen, this middle section. I'm going to leave that little bit of white so it makes a little bit of a sheen. Back here, a little bit more color. Okay, so now I'm going to just clean my brush a little bit. And I'm just going to blend this out, soften it. Now you can see that I'm going both ways now, but I'm lightly hitting, clean as I go. So I'm just trying to get this a nice soft blend. And once again, this is more of our undercoating. And I'll go across top, just to soften that up a little bit. Okay. So now that I have my little section down here of foliage, I have my water in there. Since it is water, we can come back, kind of tap down, get a little bit of reflections in there. Okay, then I'm going to take and clean my brush up a little bit. Then I'm going to take this cleaner brush and just pull straight down. Remember, just get, this is going to be reflections, so I'm going to pull them straight down. And then lightly across. So we get some nice instant reflections. Then I'm going to take my palette knife. I'm going to take just a thin little row of paint on here, and we'll suggest a little bit of a water line in here, or end of the little bit of land. Take just a touch of white. So now we have a nice indication of a water line. A little bit of an island maybe out there. So we've got that going on. So now I'm going to take my 1-inch brush. I'm going to load this up with a mixture of my black, basically a dark color, maybe a little alizarin crimson, and a bit of brown. And I'm just going to suggest some land here, and bushes and shrubs. So I'm just going to tap in some nice land area, which are shrubs, bushes, and there'll be trees coming up here eventually. Again, just tap. the edge of the knife, or the edge of the 1-inch brush. Now I've kind of based this painting on my son's home in Michigan. He's kind of on the borderline of a small little lake. We've gone fishing on that lake, and he takes his girls out to that lake. And they fish in the summer. Some young girls that he has. I have 5 granddaughters in Michigan. And they love it over there, especially this time of year. So now as I go further up here, this is going to be some nice foliage. Again, the top of the tree. So I'm going to add some more sap green in here. Touch of the white. So I'm going to come up here. I'm just going to start adding some colors up here, some nice values. Again, that's sap green. I'll start going up here. Got a little bit of this alizarin crimson up here. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to clean my brush a little bit because I want to lighten that. I want to lighten it as I go up top. So I'm cleaning up a little bit. Then I'm going to start tapping in a little bit of lighter values in here. So I'm going to go into this section over here, my Indian yellows and my ochre and my cad yellow. I'm just going to give you a little bit of white. I'm just going to get a little more color in there as I go up higher. We use the corner of the brush. Get some nice dark. Maybe a little bit white. Just to suggest some nice autumn foliage. Got a touch of the red. Some nice autumn colors. Okay, we're going to take a little bit more of this color. And we're going to go on this side, left-hand side, and we'll build something up over there. going to start, like I said, I'm going to start from the bottom and work up to that section there. So I'm getting some darks. We'll come up here. Throw a little bit of darks up there first. So we got our dark values in there. And we're going to bring this down. I'm going to bring the darks down. A little more color. Darker as I get down here. More dark. In the corner of the brush. I think I'm going to just take this and we'll go right across. Right across. Some darks. Okay, I'm going to clean the brush again. And then we're going to, once again, I'm going to take my Indian yellow, cad yellow, and we'll just tap into the top there. Mostly the corner of the brush. Maybe a little. There we go. Oh, that's a pretty color. That's a little splash of the red. You want those nice bright autumn colors in there. So down here. Now, I'm going to grab a fan brush. You could do this with a liner brush too. We'll take our fan brush. We'll get into our sienna, a little dark red, and we'll add a few little tree trunks in here. Little distant tree trunks. You decide how many tree trunks you want in there. We'll give them a little bit of a highlight and just touch a little bit of the liquid white. Okay. Okay, we have some nice trees that are coming down. Okay. So we have some trees coming down. Then we're going to take, with our liner brush, we're going to take our liner brush and I'm going to dip this into a little bit of this cleaner, odorless paint thinner, because I want this to be super thin. This brush holds a lot of paint. I want it almost like ink here, so it's dripping. And that allows us to be very loose and be able to make some nice branches. And you want to make these nice and wiggly and You can put as many of these as you wish. But it's got to be, put a couple on this side. It's got to be nice and thin and flowing. You want it, a lot of times you want to hold it toward the end when you're doing this, so it really gives you more freedom and forces you to be more loose. So as I said, you can make as many of these if you wish. And again, make sure you've got very thin paint in here. Okay. Set that down. Then we'll go with with either our 1-inch brush again, or you can use the rounded brush if you had a rounded brush. I'm tapping into some cad yellow, the white, a little bit of this reddish, and we're just going to indicate some nice colorful leaves. Just touch and pull out. And just touching and pulling. Touch this side. And maybe I'll touch a little bit of the red with that. Give it more of the fall look because we have the red with the yellow to make our orangey mix. Just a tiny bit red. Just to keep it in our fall colors. Okay. Then we're going to come down into this section here, and I think I'm going to grab I'm going to grab some sap greens. Some sap green. And just get some color in here, in this section. If it doesn't stick, you add a little bit more of that liquid white and tap. I tap into my greens. That liquid white will cause your paint to be thinner. That's what we want. Thin paint sticks to a thick paint. Come over on this side. We don't want him left out. Tap in here. Okay. And a few more sections in there. Color. Now I'm going to come back with my palette knife. Come back with my palette knife, and I'm going to grab some dark. Here's my black, brown. I'm going to get a little thin roll of paint at the end of this, and I'm just going to come back in here and we're just going to scribble in a little bit of a pathway in here. This here. Our darks down into here. Just need the dark down here because we're going to make some lights. But this will get us, you know, a nice pathway to get over to the other side. I'm going to clean my palette knife. And take a little bit of a mix of my white, a little bit of red in there. Okay, I got a little marble effect on here, and I'm going to lightly touch this. And we just want to build to suggest that path a little bit more. I'm just barely touching. that break. Then we'll come back. A little bit of liquid white. Come over into our yellows again. And we'll just kind of seal that path with some nice foliage. On this side. And we'll make it come over here too. Maybe this is the way they come in, walk across that little pathway. So I clean my palette knife. We'll take a little more green, sap green. And we'll take our 1-inch brush, get some sap green in here, tap it in there, the white, and we'll just suggest the lay of the land coming out there. Just roll that down. Maybe it hangs into the water. Tap some more. We'll get this side a little bit. Just to suggest a little bit of land. Bring it down here a little bit more. Then I'm going to clean the brush again. And I'm going to pull straight down to suggest, make some little bit of reflections here. Straight down. Plain. across. There's some nice, soft reflections. Our palette knife. There's a tiny roll of paint at the end. We'll just suggest a few water lines in here. Put a couple up in this area. As I said, in Michigan, this is just we have lots of these wooded things to go to. And as mentioned, my son is up in a little bit northern part of Michigan, in South Lyon area. He might take a little bit of a boat out there, or fish off right off the land here. But he might take he's got a kayak, number one, but he also often borrows a fishing boat so he can take his girls out fishing. All right, so now this is where Bob would talk about a bravery test. So we might as well try to have something like that, see if we can get that going for us. We see this beautiful area in here, and usually that wasn't enough for Bob having it. But if you want to stop here, that's fine. But he liked to take a nice fan brush, load it up with his dark values. Okay, bravery test. Come up here and just build a nice big tree. Maybe it come out into here and a little bit of crooked tree. So he'd put this big tree up here. Come back with our nice liquidy paint thinner and the brush, and build some nice loose branches. And that just kind of pushes our other trees back. Then we'd come back and Take our palette knife. Just a tiny little roll of paint on here and just kind of touch and pull just to highlight these a little bit. If you just touch and pull, the canvas will grab it. Just get that little roll of paint at the end, tiny little roll, touch and pull. Here, just to suggest a little bit of bark. Then, since we have all that, we'll come back with our either number 1 brush, rounded brush, and we have to make some more leaves on that. You want this lighter so it'll show up. Just take a few of these. We don't want to overdo this. Come back and grab some red. Just to suggest a little bit more autumn. Come back in here a little bit. Even down into here. A few leaves that may have fallen down in this section here. Okay. So we have lots of colors in there. Now again, this is a point where you could leave it. In my case, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to take, this is a small filbert brush. I'm going to take this, pull down, clean that off. And just use my little liner brush. suggest our little wanderer out in the woods, taking a little peek at the area, maybe scouting it out, fishing. So a nice little visitor taking a peek, seeing where the wonderful fishing spot would be. You know, cast your line over here, and even though it's fall, maybe you can still catch a nice bass in Michigan. So I'm going to do my brush up a little bit. Take a nice liquid color, and we'll just come over here, sign this. And then we'll come back over here, and we'll grab the tape, see if we can get this off. As I said, that makes kind of a nice little frame around it. So, I hope you've enjoyed this one. As I said, this is our bright autumn painting. It's a wonderful time of the year to do it. One other thing, as you step back and look at it, you can take your palette knife and just kind of flick up a few more leaves or a few more stems. And that should do it. Again, this is our autumn leaf one, bright autumn leaves. Hope you'll give it a try. You don't necessarily have to use all the colors that we have on here, but use your basic kit if you have it, your Bob Ross kits or your basic paints. Remember, you need a very thick paint to do this, so that's why they suggest the Bob Ross ones. They're thicker, and of course it's the Bob Ross technique. Be very creative, be loose. Think about a nice autumn day that you're walking through. I think about Michigan. I also sometimes prepare myself for this painting with Robert Frost, one of his poetry, one of his readings, one of his poems. So that's a nice way to get yourself in it, or take a walk in the woods and come back and start it. So once again, hope you enjoyed this. Hope you'll come back and see us soon. It's a nice way to spend an autumn afternoon. Take care. Keep on painting. Paint happy. Have a great time. Escape through this painting.